Welcome to this short video, which provides an overview of the teaching and learning e-learning modules that we have developed. These modules have been designed to help new tutors or those with more limited teaching and training experience to help improve specific aspects of their teaching and training practice. The modules originally developed to support tutors after being observed, if they had specific development needs, and now designed to support people's development in a more general way. These modules are very interactive, full of practical ideas. Each module has an assessment attached to it to check learning. This module on learning support looks first at what is meant by the term learning support in an adult learning context. It then goes on to look at the types of learning support needs learners may have, after which it looks at the indicators that a learner may be in need of support. The types of support all tutors should be able to provide with basic English and math and ICT are explored. And finally, circumstances where the support required is quite significant and a case for a learning support assistant needs to be made, or possibly a specialist diagnostic may be needed, is discussed. Getting targets right is of course very important. This module starts by looking at why we develop targets with learners. It goes on to look at identifying different types of targets that need to be used, and then different ways to help learners own their targets. Identifying the characteristics of well-written targets is another topic, along with the final topic, which is developing action plans to help learners achieve their targets. There are two creative teaching modules. The first looks at technology-mediated learning, active learning techniques, games, creative and making learning activities, and skills learning. The second one looks at the basic elements of what's called whole brain or power teaching. It looks also at the importance of ensuring that where technology is used, it adds value to the learning event. This module also looks at blended learning and how it can be incorporated within a tutor's teaching sessions. The module also looks at producing a robust teaching improvement strategy and identifying at least 3 creative teaching methods that could be used in teaching. Great teaching always starts with great session planning. This module starts by looking at the purpose of a session plan and then goes on to look at session plan structures. After this, the importance of well-defined learning outcomes is considered, and then session content sequencing. Timings for learning activities and sessions are also considered, along with what has to be taken into account regarding accommodation and equipment availability when developing session plans. And finally, the concept of episodes to support effective session planning is considered. Learning outcomes play a very important part in the effectiveness of teaching and learning. In this module, we look at the purposes a session learning outcome serves, the differences between an outcome and an objective, 5 types of learning outcomes and how these can apply to different subjects are considered. Also, the 3 domains of learning and how these relate to learning outcomes are reviewed. And finally, the application of conditions and standards or quality to learning outcomes is looked at. Embedding English within sessions is a significant challenge for some tutors. This module looks first at the categories and subcategories we can use to describe the English skills that we should seek to provide development opportunities for. It then goes on to look at practical ways of embedding speaking, listening, and communicating skills development opportunities, reading skills development opportunities, and writing skills development opportunities. This module looks at why initial diagnostics are important. It also considers why it is important and how we can ensure that initial diagnostics are proportionate, appropriately sophisticated, and cover all the things they need to. The module also considers how to integrate course-specific and other initial assessment activities and why this is important. Alongside of this, the module looks at why we need to make activities gradually more difficult for diagnostic purposes. Also considered is how initial diagnostics for areas like literacy and numeracy can be integrated with subject-specific diagnostic activities. And finally, the module looks at the importance of thinking about the approach taken in relation to the learners being taught. This module starts by looking at what is meant by the term assessment. the different types of assessment, the activities assessment involves, and whether you need to extend the range of assessment methods you use. What an assessment strategy is and looks like is also considered, along with how the detail of a strategy can be developed and how we go about choosing and amending an assessment strategy. What formative assessment is and the role of questioning to enable learning is the next topic, and after that we look at common types of questions, how tutors can improve questioning methods, including how questions can be asked at different levels to stretch and challenge learners. How both Bloom's and Dalton's taxonomies can help tutors use questions more effectively is also considered. The topic following this is the wide range of assessment techniques tutors can use to enable and check learning, followed by the features of both poorly designed and well-designed assessments. After that, the module considers what effective summative assessment design and implementation looks like, followed by internal verifier tasks which check assessment decisions and assessment design. The creation and use of assessment evidence portfolios, paper-based and e-portfolios is also considered. And finally, significant considerations are for the selection and implementation of commercial e-portfolios is addressed. This module starts with looking at what is meant by the phrase stretch and challenge in adult learning contexts. Following this, it looks at differentiation of teaching, learning and assessment. And following that, it looks at the benefits to learners of differentiated learning activities. The module also considers 9 effective techniques of differentiation and finishes by looking at stretch and challenge in a range of learning contexts. Effective learning is unlikely to take place if classrooms are not effectively managed. This module looks at how to create an engaging and stimulating learning environment. Also, the value of and how to create appropriate and effective ground rules to regulate the learning environment. What effective behaviour management in an adult learning context looks like is also considered, alongside how effective organisation of resources and equipment helps to facilitate efficient learning. How the visual dimensions of the learning environment can contribute to learning is also considered, and how the organisation of the learning area seating arrangements can enable or inhibit learning. And finally, how organising who sits with whom contributes to learning.